Blessed are you who can stand in the complexity, who can hold the righteous anger in one hand and the compassion for the same in the other, who can hold the both and the and somehow not diminish the scope of love. Blessed are you who have the courage to look inside at the complexities of the self, who are able to hold the little parts of us that run from difference, with enough compassion that those parts can expand who sits at their table. Blessed are you who are ever seeking to widen the guest list, who are willing to sit in the discomfort, for you will get to see something of the limitlessness, the boundlessness of love. Y'all, this is a hard gospel. People with much more knowledge and wisdom than I have struggle to know what to do with these words, and I know you will not leave here with any firm answers. But I'm going to take a line from Mary Oliver and say, I don't care to be too definite about anything. I have a lot of edges that are called perhaps, and not any that are called certain. I'm going to ask that we sit in the complexity, that we just allow ourselves to be curious, and that we hold that despite the oddity of the path, this story ends in healing, that it is a story that ultimately tells the truth, that hope is real, and that love is boundless. Now, Mark is a tightly written text. There's a pattern to the interactions and a forward movement that is dependent on earlier parts in the narrative. And these healings have a bit more clarity if we look at them as part of a whole, and if we place them in the context in which they were written. In the context of history, Mark was written about 70 years after the time of Jesus, during a time in which the people of Tyre, the Greeks, who we meet here through the Syrophoenician woman, were wealthy and unhelpful neighbors, participating in the oppression and subjugation of the Jews, buying up food produced by the Jews that they themselves could not afford. There is perhaps some righteous anger here. For the first hearers of Mark most certainly would have been asking, why must our food be given to the enemy? Why can the children not be fed first? At the same time, in the context in the narrative, not in the history of the writing, but the story itself, the healing of the Syrophoenician woman's daughter is a dramatic turning point for the direction of the mission of the gospel of love. Jesus had dipped his big toe in the sea of Gentile healing only once before this, and it had not gone well. He had sent the demon legion into a herd of swine, to which the Gentile crowd reacted in fear, begging him to leave. Jesus has since focused on healing fellow Jews and on arguing with the religious leaders about what was holy and clean. He has been pushing the boundaries in his own neighborhood, attempting to expand their understanding of who is in, where holiness sits, and how big love is. Just prior to these stories, he has had a knockdown, drag-out argument with the Pharisees about what defiles a person. The Pharisees are arguing for an adherence to the law about clean and unclean foods and the washing of hands. Jesus is arguing that what is unclean comes from the heart. The whole narrative up to this point has pushed on its hearers' ears just a bit. Expand, expand. This is a new thing. It is bigger than the old ways. It is bigger than your imagining. And now the narrative has dumped us here, in Tyre, in enemy territory, the most unclean sort of place that you could find himself. And in that context, Jesus says what the reader and hearer of 70 AD would have expected. Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Is this righteous anger? Is this Jesus holding up a mirror to those hearing to let the dehumanizing words in the face of this desperate woman strike discomfort? Is this what Jesus believes in the moment? Is this, as in all other healings, the obstacle that must be overcome to create the place where faith and miracle meet? I don't think we can ever know for sure. But what we can know is that the woman's clever comeback changes everything. Sir, even dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Jesus replies, for this word, go, the demon has left your daughter. For this word, this is the same language used in the Greek for the word gospel, for the word that Jesus has been speaking throughout the narrative of Mark. She has spoken gospel to Jesus, and Jesus' ears are open. He will go from this place to heal more and more Gentiles. He will repeat the miracle of loaves and fishes with the Gentile crowd, and he will call his band of followers at the end to take love not just to the Jews, but to the ends of the earth. This one interaction has knocked down the boundaries for whom salvation, healing, and love exist. We are, I think, in our own hearts in that moment between I'm not throwing my food to the dogs and hearing the gospel word of this desperate, brave, clever woman in a couple of ways. First, I think we do hold in ourselves righteous anger. When I think about children who are dehumanized for their identity, humans who are pushed from their homes by war machines or public policy, children who are in schools where there are guns, I think I feel toward particular groups like the Jews may have felt toward the people of Tyre. And there is a small part of me, some days a big part of me, who wants to dress them down, send them on their way without any help, who certainly does not want to hang out with them and hear their needs. And I think I cannot always understand where is the line between arguing for what is right and holy, like Jesus has done with the Pharisees, calling out injustice and sin, and where it is shrinking the scope of love to not include these folks at all. I think we are called to hear this woman's words, to stand in the tension, to be ever aware of both the righteous anger and the limitlessness of love that tells the truth that these folks have a place at the table too. How do we get ourselves to see the beauty of the being that is masked by the ugliness of the action? How can we remember the humanity of the one apart from the monstrosities of the group? We live in such a polarized space. Can you imagine a world where that was different? There is another way to look at this story, one less focused on the historical moment of the story's writing and more on the narrative itself. Here, a Jewish man dehumanizes a Gentile woman with hard words born out of his patriarchal and cultural experience, words that are not okay. One commentator I read said, "Preacher, you were going to want to save Jesus here, and you can't." I still want to hold the possibility that these words are spoken to shock the hearers, to cause them and us to see the ugliness of racism, sexism, and othering. But I cannot know that. I can only know that I don't like this look for Jesus. I think in our own hearts, we also have places that move through the world, so mired in our own worldview that we don't even see our bias and our hurtfulness. From the outside, we hear Jesus say these words and we say, "Oh, don't be a jerk." But perhaps we also need these Syrophoenician woman's words to hit us at the level of our implicit bias. Allow the gospel of her words to wake us up to those hidey holes in our hearts that might cause us to act in harmful and hurtful ways. Where is it that we feast while others only receive crumbs? Where are the places we make our tables too small? Where does the guest list get limited without us even noticing? Can we have the courage to stand in the complexity of life and find ways to knock down some of the boundaries we have put on love? This windy path leads us finally to an important truth of the story. God's love is tender and healing and sees us whether we are on the right side or the wrong. That there is no limit to this love your God has for you. Where your ears are closed, love wants you to hear. Where your voice is stolen, love wants you to be able to shout your truth. Where you are hurting and desperate, where hope feels lost, love would hold you close and breathe into your heart peace. But the path to that healing is winding. It might involve some sparring with some wisdom that makes us change. It might involve knocking down some boundaries that we held previously as necessary and true. It might involve some uncomfortable vulnerability with ourselves and one another. But I promise it will lead to a space in which the depth and boundlessness of love will astound you. So blessed are you who can stand in the complexity, who can hold the righteous anger in one hand and the compassion for the same in the other, who can can hold the both and the and somehow not diminish the scope of love. Blessed are you who have the courage to look inside at the complexities of the self, who are able to hold the little parts of us that run from difference with enough compassion that those parts can expand who sits at their table. Blessed are you who are ever seeking to widen the guest list, who are willing to sit in this place, where you will get to see something of the limitlessness, the boundlessness of love.